In the last century, there was an old brick homestead built at 506 Lee Street. The house spanned the turning of the century, as did its mysterious little gray lady. Writer Marion Harlan Terhune tells of a meeting she had with the wispy little lady. Terhune tells of the meeting, saying that it was a gusty, stormy night. Marion Harlan had just extinguished the hanging lamp in the front hall, taking a lamp from a parlor table to light a way to her bedroom up a broad stair. She passed through a small archway in the hall, closing the door behind her. The lamp threw a bright light across the passage, and as the door closed behind her, she saw as distinctly as if by daylight a small woman start out of the opposite door, glide noiselessly along the wall, and disappear at the Venetian blinds hanging at the end of the front hall. Dressed in gray, the little woman's head was bowed upon her hands, and in her hair was a tortoise-shell comb. Over the next few years, several other children in the family saw the apparition. Finally, the father gathered the household together and confirmed that he too had, on numerous occasions, encountered the little gray lady. Only his encounters were different. He recalled that at least on 50 occasions, he'd felt someone touch his feet when half asleep, then press their hands down on his chest. At first, he'd been convinced his wife was arranging the covers to keep out drafts, only to discover his wife wasn't in the room. Years passed, and although the family continued to see the little gray lady occasionally, they didn't talk about it, not even when guests would happen to have an encounter. Years later, the home became an orphanage. There was a need for renovation. So, in the process, digging was begun outside and just under the drawing room window. There, less than 6 feet away from that window, with no coffin, no headstone, and no marker, was discovered the body of a small woman. And under her head was an ornately carved tortoise-shell comb. Stories of the little gray lady did not cease. There were reports she visited the wards in the orphanage, but those adults with first-hand encounters with her continued to hold their secret and pledge of silence. During the Depression, the old house at 506 Lee served as headquarters for the Salvation Army Men's Hotel. Major Alfred Houston says he never encountered the little gray lady, but many of the men who quartered there said they did, and many swore they'd never return.
In the 1800s, there was a home in Chesterfield County, about 6 miles from Richmond, which was acquired by the Childs family. To the Childs' knowledge, it had no record of being haunted. However, soon after they moved in, they began hearing strange noises. Doors which had been carefully locked would open. Shutters could not be kept shut. And windows would raise that had been carefully fastened. Whisperings and soft stepping movements could be heard over the house where no one should have been. Once the family maintained a vigil in an attempt to confront the visitor. Several times that night, they heard the strange sound of someone coming down the front stairs, but never anyone around. So as they gave up the vigil and prepared for evening prayers, the doors were closed and locked with a bar in place across them, as was the nightly custom. Suddenly, the oak bars fell with a loud crash. Both back and front doors flew open. The doors were quickly closed and locked, but in a few minutes, that same sound on the stairs, and again the bar blocking the doors fell, The doors flew open with a bang. During these occurrences, there'd be a soft, sobbing cry at the foot of the winding stairs leading to the shop. The Childs family could take it no more, so they sold the place. But they told their experiences to the new owner. He experienced no manifestations, except on 2 occasions, when he entertained a member of the Childs family. And again, on each of these occasions, the sounds on the stairs, and those strange, sobbing cries.
In her book, Virginia Ghosts, Marguerite DuPont Lee recalls Mrs. Campbell Pryor, a direct descendant of the builder of a Petersburg estate known as Center Hill. Through Mrs. Pryor, a most unique tale is told pertaining to the old structure, which was built by Captain Robert Bowling, who served in the American fight for independence. The massive old brick mansion is said to often have enchanted those who drove past it and bewildered those who at twilight would often see a beautifully dressed lady seated at the second-story window over the front door. 6-year-old Bannister Pryor asked his mother one morning just who the lady had been who had sat on his bed the night before and talked with him. And when further quizzed, the youth gave a perfect description of the spirit of the window. And often there would be many familiar airs heard from a little melodeon in the library. But no one was in the room. The spirit also apparently had special attachment to a small room on the first floor, for she prohibited anyone from making a bedroom of it. No matter how securely tucked in were the bed covers, as soon as the lights were out, they'd fly from the bed onto the middle of the floor. And there's another interesting account of a strange happening at Center Hill. Not at all related to the spirit in the window from what we can gather. But for many years, on the evening of January 24th, Center Hill was the scene of a noise, such as of a regiment of soldiers marching and of sabers clanking, suggesting those marching were doing so right through the passageway and up the stairs, down and out the door. No one has explained it satisfactorily. Center Hill is still around. It's now a museum. But few people like to discuss the unexplained events that we've reported. Although one employee in a key position nervously told us that she does often hear noises and strange sounds that she cannot define.
In 1908, Army Captain Jeffrey Montague, who was formerly a prominent newspaper man in Richmond, met a ghost in a bedroom of an old brick house he'd rented on Franklin Street. Montague says it happened one night as he slept alone in the front room of the upper story, his wife in another room. Montague claimed he was awakened in the middle of the night by the noise of an automobile going by on Franklin at a high speed. Then he says he felt sharply aware of someone in the room. His first reaction was a burglar. But upon opening his eyes, just enough to see, he saw a woman standing at the foot of his bed, her head and shoulders distinct, but the rest of the figure a white blur. He says the figure walked to the window, inclined its head, looked down into the street. Montague says he'd always heard it was dangerous to awaken a sleepwalker. Therefore, he decided not to disturb his wife. Now he says he could see the nose topping the lower indoor blinds, which were closed and latched. By now, he was up on his elbow to witness what was going on. Still thinking it was his wife, and deciding he'd better awaken her, he called her name.